back with more Feli from Germany on the channel. This time, she's reacting to Texas German, which a couple weeks back we looked at her video on Pennsylvania Dutch, and this was thrown at us a couple times to check out as well.
Yeah.
Which it's like the concept of our country having, little pockets of German folk with their own German language that's kind of influenced by that area is mind-boggling.
Yeah, that's wild. That's wild. I didn't even know those. I mean, obviously I knew the Pennsylvania Dutch existed. But I didn't know how deep those roots went. You know, like I feel like I left it at that. I was like, oh, Pennsylvania Dutch. Cool. I didn't know it was actually that deep rooted at all. Like their history was a lot different and vast. It's like a different branch off.
Oh, 100%.
It's crazy.
So we may have something similar here. But there's only one way to find out. You ready?
Yep. Let's go into it, man.
3, 2, 1.
If you said that in Germany nowadays, your friends would be like, you really have to show off your English skills like that. People completely took Denglish to the next level. Maybe I would just have to listen again and I would get it. Sounds a little bit like a child is speaking. Reinmoven. Okay, that's so cool. Dann tun halt Mexikaner reinmoven. Deutschlich. That's a cool adjective. But really, they have more in common than I thought.
So that's like a greatest hits reel right there of all the out of context clips. I'm a sucker for things like that.
I love that. Yep.
Hello, servus, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Feli. I'm originally from Munich, Germany, but I've been living here in Cincinnati, Ohio, on and off since 2016. And as a German living in the US, I often get asked about German aspects of the US, like German-style towns such as Frankenmuth, Michigan, Helen, Georgia, or Fredericksburg, Texas, and about German dialects that are spoken in the US, such as Pennsylvania Dutch, which is the language that groups like the Amish speak to this day. That's why last month I made this video where I reacted to clips of people speaking Pennsylvania Dutch, and I wanted to see how much I, as a native German speaker, could understand. If you haven't seen that yet, I'm gonna link that for you up here and down below. And since that video was so popular and I got a lot of comments asking for me to do the same thing with Texas German, that's exactly what we're gonna do today. But before I actually listen to Texas German and find out whether or not I can understand anything, let's look at what Texas German, or Texas Deutsch, even is. As the name suggests, the dialect is located in the state of Texas, specifically in the so-called German Belt there. That includes towns like New Braunfels, Pflugerville, Comfort, or Fredericksburg that I mentioned earlier, originally Friedrichsburg in German, that were all founded by German settlers in the 19th century. Now, I talked about this a little bit more in detail in my video about German heritage in the US. I'll link that up here too, but to summarize it, around the time of the German Revolution of 1848, there was a big wave of German immigrants coming to the US who were trying to escape the unstable economic and political situation back home. Many of those people were liberal intellectuals who, unlike the conservative aristocracy, wanted a unified German national state. And this is also the context that these German towns in Texas were founded in. Fredericksburg was founded by the Prussian bureaucrat and politician Ottfried Hans Freiherr von Meusebach in 1846, and the town of New Braunfels was founded by German prince and military officer Karl von Solms-Braunfels 1 year prior. Just like in many other German settlements in the US, the German immigrants that came to Texas brought their language with them, so for a long time, German was actually the main language that people spoke at home, but also the language that was used in schools, churches, and businesses, particularly in the hill country between Austin and San Antonio. The state of Texas even gave the German language equal status to Spanish in 1846. Up until World War...
Wow, that is... hold the phone. So it could have... It's trilingual. It could be, at least in that little belt, German, English, and Spanish as well.
At least back then, for sure.
Yeah.
That's crazy to like... I always find that fascinating that a group of people can come and essentially create a town, especially back then. Like, that's absolutely awesome. You just be like, this right here, yeah, town, Bromsfeld, whatever she was saying. That's
Fredericksburg, places like
cool.
that. Yeah,
cool, man. I mean, Texas, I guess you have the space to do it.
Right. Everything's bigger in Texas.
Yeah.
But yeah.
The German language equal status to Spanish in 1846, up until World War I, when a nationwide so-called anti-German hysteria or anti-German sentiment led to the German language being banned in schools and other public places, German organizations and businesses disappearing, and Germans being heavily discriminated against. This also affected the German Americans living in Texas, which is why after about 5 generations, they stopped passing the language on to their children. And with World War II following so shortly after, it's believed that the last people growing up with Texas German as their first language were born around 1950, which is why today the language is only spoken by a relatively small number of elderly people in Texas who are currently in their 60s, 70s and up. Now, unlike Pennsylvania Dutch, which is considered to be its own language in a way, that despite regional differences somewhat has its own vocabulary, grammar structures, and even poems, songs, and nursery rhymes, as we saw in the last video, Texas German seems to be more of an umbrella term for German dialects spoken in Texas. Those usually consist of different regional dialects from 19th century Germany, mixed with English and even some Spanish influences. Wikipedia describes it as a group of German language dialects spoken by descendants of German immigrants who settled in Texas in the mid-19th century. And Professor Hans Boas, who started the Texas German Dialect Project at the University of Texas in Austin and has interviewed over 400 Texas German speakers, says that he and his team haven't found 2 speakers that speak exactly alike. He even says that every Texas German speaker has their own personal style of speaking it. Even though the language is expected to fully disappear by 2040, I saw during my research that the members of the Texas German community today are very proud of their language and heritage, and they like to stay involved in German organizations such as choirs and shooting clubs. They dance polka and waltz, and they even play 9-pin bowling, Kegeln in German. Now, with that being said, let's see how much I, as a German coming from modern day Germany, can understand of Texas German.
Yeah, that's crazy that it'll probably die out by 2040 right there. Like, that's if you have German heritage and you live in Texas, that should be something that concerns you. I would think.
Yeah, I mean, you think about what was happening and why the German was stopped, like being passed down and being spoken. Makes sense, but at the same time, it's so interesting because the Pennsylvania Dutch, like, they were the OGs pretty much.
Yeah.
They came here early, and so I feel like their language has had that time to evolve, whereas this German influx hasn't had that same amount of time to evolve as the Pennsylvania Dutch.
Right.
So I feel like she might understand it a little bit better because of how recent it is.
Yeah. That I can see where you'd come from with that, but I don't know one way to find out.
Yeah, man. Okay, I'm excited. Let's go.
Yeah.
So what I did is I just Googled and I made a list of YouTube videos, links that I found where it looks like people are going to speak Texas German. I try to stay away from listening to anything yet. So yeah, I'm just gonna go through those on my laptop down here, and I'll put the links to the original videos in the info box below for you guys. Start with the first video. This one is on the channel WikiTongues. We watched a video on that channel last time too, and it's called Vernell Speaking Texas German. Let's check it out.
Ich heiße Vernell Eila. Ich bin 6 Mal nördlich von Fredericksburg geboren. Zu der Zeit waren damals Kinder noch zu Hause geboren. Und ich kann mich nicht.
Okay, so far I can really understand every single word. Her pronunciation is like very slightly different from standard German pronunciation, but I mean, that could just be any regional dialect in Germany. So far, she said that she was born 6 miles north of Fredericksburg and that it was at a time when kids were still born at home. So let's see what else I can understand.
Erinnern, wo ich nicht beide Sprachen kann, Deutsch und Englisch. Ich habe es zur selben Zeit gelernt. Und dann bin
Okay,
ich
so she learned
3 Jahre
English and German
bin
at the
ich
same time.
nach einer Country-Schule gegangen. Und dann
Okay.
dann haben sie uns nach die Stadt geschickt. Und so habe ich dann fertig gemacht bei Friedrichsburg.
Okay, so now there were definitely some interesting grammar structures in there where you can just tell that it was like mixed with English over time. I think she said something like nach die Schule or nach die Stadt, something like that, where like the preposition and the article, like that wouldn't be proper German nowadays. I don't think it was proper German back then, but that's just like how it developed in the area. Like it's still totally understandable. Like it doesn't, you know, make the sentence hard to understand. It's just, you can tell that she's not a modern native German speaker. What's also interesting though is that she uses like normal colloquial expressions in German, like haben Sie, for example, like instead of haben Sie, haben Sie. That's something that people will say today too, in some dialects more than in others. So yeah, so far so good.
Yeah, and you could definitely hear a Texas accent with this woman here.
It's like, crazy to hear a German accent spoken with a Texan accent.
Yeah,
German with a Texan accent. It's great. All right, man. My mind is blown, bro.
Yeah. This is an ear just like, what the hell?
Wow.
Let's see what else she's telling us.
Hier in die Schule fertig gemacht und in die Hochschule. Und dann habe ich in die Stadt gearbeitet.
Oh yeah, she's talking about her school, by the way.
Für 3 Jahre.
She was sent to a country school first, then a school in the city, and then she went to high school. And she translates that, like instead of Schule, she says Schule, which again could just be like a regional, like German dialect thing. There's definitely dialects that kind of drop the ending there. Or it could be a Texas German thing, I'm not sure. And then she worked in the city, she said.
Verheiratet. Und mein Mann und ich, wir hoffen, bis nächsten Monat sind wir 57 Jahre verheiratet. Und wir haben immer...
Okay, and then she got married, and I can tell that she also uses like the English R, which is, you know, also something, of course, that you wouldn't hear in Germany nowadays. But again, not a problem to understand her. She says, you know, interesting expressions like ich habe mich verheiratet or verheiratet instead of ich habe geheiratet is kind of what we would say. And what's also interesting is that instead of wir, she keeps saying mir, which is again a dialect thing that we even do in Bavarian dialect, but I wouldn't really associate her with Bavarian dialect. I would probably say more like Central Germany, maybe something like Hessisch or not sure, probably not like Bavarian, but I think that's something that they do in a lot of different dialects, is like mir instead of wir. So I don't know, all of that just makes her sound very authentic and very familiar with the language. You know, it doesn't sound like someone just learned German in a classroom, which obviously is not the case. She grew up with this as one of her native languages.
Draußen aufs Land gewohnt, ich habe noch nie in die Stadt gewohnt. Und wir haben...
They always lived out on the countryside.
3 Kinder gehabt. Aber die sprechen kein Deutsch. Weil da waren, wo wir die Kinder hatten und die
yeah, and also I forgot to say that she said that her and her husband have been married for, what did she say, 54 or 57 years, something like that. And that her 3 kids never spoke German though.
So haben die anderen Kinder, was die gekannt haben, die haben kein Deutsch gesprochen, so haben unsere Kinder das auch nicht gelernt. Und die sind dann auch alle fortgezogen jetzt nach anderen.
This is a thing that definitely comes from English, I would say, because this is something that English speakers who learn German definitely also do. And I think they did this in Pennsylvania Dutch as well, where they say, we didn't live close to Fredericksburg, so my kids didn't learn German. Using so the way that you would do it in English, as in a consequence. In German, we would probably usually say also, not just so. So that's interesting. And then she also said things like gekannt instead of gekannt, so kind of like a wrong past form of the word kennen. But again, this doesn't mean that this is like wrong German or poor German. I don't mean this in any condescending way. It's just interesting to see like the little differences. But honestly, this is so far, at least when she's speaking, much easier to understand for me. Like, I've been able to understand every single word she said.
Wow.
Yeah, like the part that is, you know, shocking to me is that her children did not speak German at all. Maybe it was a time where they were trying to not speak German because of the stuff that was going on in the world wars. But I guess that's just a case where you don't want your children to have your language, which I guess with any other culture, if you maybe lived in a mixed culture marriage or something, you'd want your children to have both languages. That way you represent both of your parents' cultures. But this is just a case where it's not that way. Yeah.
Arbeit bei Friedrichsburg, so sind die all weitergegangen und sind all nach College gegangen und haben alle arbeiten jetzt in die Städte, wo sie mehr Geld machen können. Und so, mein Mann und ich, wir haben immer...
Yeah, she also says like Städte, instead of Städte for cities, which sounds a little bit like Northern German, or it could be the English influence. Kind of depends, because like pronouncing T's as D's is like an American English thing, obviously. Like saying city instead of city, for example, and that's something that people in the northern parts of Germany do as well. So, you know, it could be either of those two influences. It's probably more likely that it's the English influence, but it's an interesting thing that stands out to me.
Draußen auf der Ranch gewohnt. Mein Mann hat für andere Leute gearbeitet, wo größere Stücken Land hatten. Und so haben wir Schaf und Ziehen und Vieh gezogen.
So basically she was just saying that her and her husband had a ranch, or still have a ranch, and they had a lot of different animals, livestock and stuff like that.
Ich war immer zu Hause mit den Kindern, und dann, wo die etwas größer waren, dann habe ich verschiedene Plätze in die Stadt gearbeitet. Und ich arbeite jetzt bei dem Pioneer Museum, und weil das ist, die haben hier die Geschichte von Friedrichsburg, und so, wenn Leute kommen, dann nehme ich das Geld für Eintritt und Sachsen etwas von Friedrichsburg.
Yeah, there's another thing when she says Friedrichsburg, that also sounds like a specific dialect, which I also would say like Hamburg. Like that sounds like a northern German to me, which they might do that in other dialects as well, but that's like my first association with that. It's just like Hamburg and Städte. Like I just feel like that's that area up there. So maybe that's where her ancestors were from, or maybe that's something that just happened like within that Texas German community.
Something I'm taking away from this is, like, eventually I'd love to, you know, learn German, and I know there's ways to do it, like with, you know, like Duolingo, things like that. But, you know, the fact that there's regional dialects, and if you don't get it 100% right, you know, you could still communicate and get mostly there, even with like a regional dialect like this.
Yeah, no, that's giving me definite hope. Like, you don't have to stick the language completely. Like,
right.
That she can understand everything that she's trying to say.
Right. And knowing that there's several regional dialects here of English in the United States, and Lord knows Britain as well.
Yeah.
So that's good to know that even though the languages are different, the regionalities are not as different as we think.
Von unserer Geschichte und schicke sie raus, und dann können sie selber nach dem Museum gucken. Ich habe eine Schwester, und weil ich habe bloß eine Schwester, waren bloß mir zwei Mädchens. Aber mein Vater hat bloß Mädchens gehabt, so haben wir free Yachten gelernt. So,
Mädchens instead of just Mädchen. The plural of girl, Mädchen, is the same word, Mädchen. In German, there is no S or anything. She adds an S, which again could be the English influence, maybe.
Ich mir immer noch weiter gern Yachten, Herrschjachten. Meine Schwester kann jetzt nicht mehr jachten, aber die hat auch immer mal so gejagt früher und so.
Okay, I have to go back. I think she talked about hunting, so jagen, and she keeps saying like jachten or jagten, which is interesting because that's the noun. Die Jagd, the hunt, but that's not the verb I would use. So I don't know if they like made that up or what, or if comes from Germany. Like, let me know if you're German and in your dialect you guys say jachten. I don't know how exactly she pronounced it, but let's go back. I think she said Hirschjagd. So like, what's a Hirsch? Like a deer.
Mein Vater hat bloß Mädchens gehabt, so haben wir free Yachten gelernt. So tun wir immer noch beide gern Yachten, Herrschjachten. Meine Schwester kann jetzt nicht mehr jachten, aber die hat auch immer mal so gejagt früher. Und
yeah, she's talking about her and her sister, how her dad only had girls, and that's why they both learned how to hunt pretty early on. And they kept doing it for a long time, but her sister can't do it anymore now. Honestly, I think let's move on to the next video because this was already a long time and I know I said a whole lot. The next one I'm just gonna sit back a little bit more. Okay, so this next video is on the AP Archive YouTube channel and it's called A Region That Speaks a Texas German Dialect. Okay, I think we're gonna have to skip forward a little bit. Again, I'm gonna put the links down below if you want to watch the full video.
Oh, it's good to know that she shares the behind the scenes of reaction stuff. I have the tendency to try and edit that stuff out, but maybe I should start leaving it in, you know?
Yeah, just do it. Save yourself some headache, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's okay with me. I'll be
right.
fine with it.
I appreciate that.
Probably interesting. Let's see, here's people.
Das ist jetzt eine gute Gelegenheit,
Oh, it's hard to understand.
mal darüber zu reden, dass wir die Braunfels wieder Deutschland machen müssen.
Krause? No. Nicht keine Krause? It's noch
Keine Krause? It's not hard to understand language-wise, it's just hard to understand acoustically. It's probably, is that goulash? It's probably German.
Goulash. Okay, that's a Hungarian thing. Got it.
German food.
Es war nicht verboten, aber wir haben immer noch Deutsch gesprochen zu Hause. Aber in die Stadt, wo früher, da waren jeder Geschäft oder Store, da war Deutsche drin. Du konntest die deutsche Sprache jeden Tag hören. Und nach dem Krieg, aber nicht von Anfang von dem Krieg, das war mehr verboten. Ich will nicht sagen, es war verboten, aber so stark verboten. Aber du kannst gleich sehen, dass jeder.
Okay, so he's definitely talking about the war, probably World War II, or I don't know if he's talking about World War I and like talking from stories that he's been told. But he said that German wasn't exactly forbidden, but people spoke it less and less in the stores. You could probably hear the word store because he said Geschäft and then store, like he threw in the English word as well. And again, he does this thing where he pronounces the endings very soft, like Krieg, for example, instead of Krieg, talking about the war. And another thing that he did that Vernell did as well is instead of, I think he said hören, instead of saying hören with the umlaut O, they say hören. And that's actually something that I came across when I did my research, is that that's a typical thing about Texas German, is that the umlauts kind of become opened up. So like instead of Ü, they say I. Instead of Ö, they say E. Instead of I don't actually know what they say instead of that. But that's kind of what I've come across before, and I find that confirmed in these two interviews because I think he said Herren instead of Hören.
So ist das Deutsche hier in Texas, viele Wörter haben, ist es ein englisches Wort, aber so ein bisschen deutschlich ausgesprochen, wie wir sagen, die Krieg, das ist ein
Deutschlich, that's a cool adjective. Yeah, that's like a made-up adjective that I really like. Deutschlich, like Germanish. Germany. She says there's a lot of English words that people just pronounce like Germanish.
So basically it's like Spanglish. Like there's certain words in Spanish or that are pronounced in an Englishy kind of way and vice versa. I don't know too much about it. It's probably, I don't know. I'll be interested if anybody here in the comment section is a German that immigrated to Texas in more recent times and moved to that area, because I feel like in that circle of like Texas German, like both Austin and San Antonio are in there, so those are big metropolitan areas that are probably
you know, I would love to hear them talk with a German, a native German speaker as well. I would love to hear their American accents as well.
Yeah, just
Because
to see.
I just feel like I feel like yes, they know how to speak Texas German, but do they use it on a daily?
Yeah,
You know,
that's the interesting thing, and if from what Feli is saying is that a lot of it's mainly like the older heads that are using it. That's maybe not as much, or maybe just a more hip to the streets, younger folks that are educated a little more better. There.
Oh, here it is. It'd be like you saying quesadilla instead of quesadilla.
Yeah.
Kind of. I mean, very base level to
Right.
that for what you said.
Yeah, it's English and Spanish. Yeah.
Aber in Englisch ist das Wort Creek und haben wir gesagt, die Creek. Und wir wussten gar nicht von das Wort Bach.
Okay, interesting. So she says, for example, the word crick, like instead of using the German word Bach, she said they didn't even know about that, which is the German word for creek. They would use the English word but pronounce it German. So they would pronounce it crick, and then that was their word.
Nice.
Interessante ist,
okay, now that's the professor I was mentioning, Hans Boas. He's like one of the main people in that research area right now. And he's obviously German. Gemütlichkeit zur Ewigkeit. Not quite sure how to translate that. Gemütlichkeit is that word that's kind of hard to translate into English, like comfort or coziness. Zur Ewigkeit, like Gemütlichkeit to eternity? Or for eternity? I don't know. Friesenhaus. And I see the Hofbräu logo. Okay, that was that video. I'm not quite sure when this was from. It says 2015 is when it was uploaded, but it looked a little bit older to me. It was probably a few years older than that, I think.
Yeah.
So now let's move on to an audio file here on the German American and American English dialects website. It's a project of the Max Kade Institute, and there's 2 links right here, and it says this is an interview from the late 1960s, so that might sound a little bit different. Let's see. Female speaker, date of birth unknown, 3rd generation Texas German, date place of interview late 1960s, Central Texas, interviewer Glenn G. Gilbert. Okay, and there's a little context here. So it says that the German settlers in Texas often found themselves involved in conflicts with Indians. And the speaker is talking about her grandfather's violent encounter with a Comanche brave.
Ja, und Sie sagen, Ihr Großvater.
Okay, so the interviewer is German.
In den Knie geschossen.
Oh, geschossen?
Ja, das Knie war verschossen. Sie haben gar nicht gemeint, dass lebend ist.
Er hat das nicht gebrochen, als er vom Pferd
No, sie haben ihn in den Beinen geschossen, im Knie. Und dann haben sie geschossen und er ist gefallen und sein Pferd ist auf ihn gefallen.
Ist sein Pferd tot?
Ja, sein Pferd war tot. Und dann konnte er erst nicht unter das Pferd wegkommen. Und
again, the soft endings.
Wie denn der Wagen gehört hat, dann haben sie ihn heimgeholfen. Und mein Onkel von meinem Vaters Seite hat das Gewehr, was der Indianer tot gemacht hat. Jedes Mal, wenn sie einen Indianer tot gemacht haben, haben sie
tot gemacht.
Marker ins Gewehr gemacht, wie sagt man das jetzt, in the stock. Then put a V in the stock.
Aha. Wie viele Indianer, wie V's waren das?
Ich weiß nicht, es hat ein Tal V's drin gehabt, aber er hat nur einen tot gemacht.
Okay, so that was definitely an interesting story. She talked about how a Native American shot her grandfather in the knee and how they also shot his horse and the horse fell onto him and they thought he was dead and he wasn't going to survive, but he did. And then honestly, I couldn't quite follow because she said something about like her grandfather and the uncle, so I guess the grandfather's brother or his uncle, I'm not quite sure, put a mark into their rifle every time that they killed a Native American. But I'm not quite sure if they said that this was the rifle that was used by the Native American to shoot at the grandfather, or if they said that they shot that Native American afterwards. I kind of got lost there. That wasn't a language thing though. I feel like she just like left something out there. Maybe I would just have to listen again and I would get it. But one thing that was interesting is that instead of töten or like to kill, töten, umbringen, or any other verb, she said totgemacht, which again sounds a little bit like poor grammar to a modern German speaker, because that's something that maybe a kid would say. So basically, it's totgemacht would be to make dead. Instead of to kill, töten. But yeah, that's just an interesting observation. Other than that, again, super easy to understand. It's really impressive how they've maintained this language for so many generations. Let's check out the
Sorry.
To make dead.
Yeah, to make dead. Like, it just, that's a typical just, Texan story. They done shot my paw.
So
like
I killed them and I put a little mark on my rifle.
But just said
killed
it in
my horse.
You killed my horse.
You killed my horse. Shit.
Bullshit and thinking, the cycling and singing.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's just had to get the German part in
What
there.
a old school story. I would have loved to talk to her, man.
Yeah.
1960s, like, bro, I'm ready to write in a book. You're whatever you're telling me, I'm about to make a story about that. Or a good Western song.
Yeah. Was John Wayne still alive then? Because that could have been a perfect role for him.
60s? Maybe. I don't know, bro. I have no idea.
Yeah,
I couldn't remember.
I don't know.
Understand. It's really impressive how they've maintained this language for so many generations. Let's check out the other clip on here. This one is from the same interviewer, same time, same place, but it says male speaker. And for context, I'm just going to read this. It says, in Central Europe, German and Czech speakers lived for centuries in close proximity to one another, especially in the territories of Bohemia and Moravia. During the 19th and early 20th centuries, several thousand Czechs, Bohemians, were part of a large wave of Europeans dominated by German speakers who migrated to Texas. The German and Czech-speaking areas in Texas overlapped in and Fayette counties in the south-central part of the state. This Texas German speaker from north of Shiner, Lavaca County, recounts something of the ethnic and linguistic diversity that endures in this part of Texas to the present. So long story short, it's about the overlap of Czech-speaking immigrants and German-speaking immigrants, I think.
Und wie ist es mit Deutsch? Gibt es auch Neger hier?
Oh ja.
Können die Deutsch oder Bämisch sprechen?
Ja, das sind welche, die kennen Deutsch und Bämisch.
Deutsch und Bämisch.
Ja.
So, okay, first of all, I'm pretty sure they just said the N-word, which is just, I mean, I guess it's the 1960s, so yeah, the historical context, but kind of threw me off for a second there, because especially in German, I do not hear that word ever. Like, that's just not something that you hear anymore. And again, instead of Böhmisch, like I would say it in German with the O umlaut, with the Ö, he said Bämisch.
Ja, das ganz toll Mexikaner moven hier rein. Das sind eine Masse Farmers, die moven weg, return.
Moven.
Die Plätze werden verkauft, ihr Land wird verkauft an die City. Leute, an große Stadtleute und dann die Häuser stehen leer, dann tun halt Mexikaner reinmoven.
Reinmoven, okay, that's so cool. Dann tun halt Mexikaner reinmoven. So for context, the interviewer asked if, I think if I understood that right, African Americans in the area also speak German, and then the interviewee said, yeah, they even also speak Bohemian, so Czech. And then he also asked, are there Mexicans as well? And he said, yes, there are Mexicans, and whenever houses are empty, Mexicans move in there. And the way that he said it with the reinmoven, that's just kind of like last time what I said, how some of the Pennsylvania Dutch expressions just sounded like modern day Denglish. So like the mix of German and English that, you know, is part of our youth language, where we just like mix it all together because we consume so much in English in Germany and all the text stuff is in English usually. So there's just a lot of words that people use in English within a German sentence nowadays, and some of this literally sounds like that, but people completely overdid it. Like, people completely took Denglish to the next level. Like, if you said that in Germany nowadays, your friends would be like, do you really have to show off your English skills like that? Can't you just say it in German? Which of course isn't the case here, but it's like funny how he used this word several times in a row. He didn't just say a German word and then also the English word in addition to that. He only used that English word. So like instead of saying umziehen or umgezogen, he said moven. And then like with the English R that he did too, like reingemoved, that's just, I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's like when he said Mexicaner or like whatever that was, like the German way of saying Mexican.
Yeah.
That just blew my mind, man.
Yeah. I was like, okay, I'm buckled in.
Yeah.
It's so neat, man. God damn. It's so neat.
Yeah.
It's in Texas.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. It's like folks like us, like starting to get into German culture. Like there's 2 areas of the United States that, you know, you can find bits of German culture, you know, Pennsylvania and Texas.
Bro, I am just shocked, man. I am shocked.
Yeah.
It's super neat, man.
Yeah.
It just proves like that this place is just such a melting pot.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah.
Like holy crap. I didn't even know at all.
Yeah. You never know what you're gonna get. And we're getting this stuff.
Die moven halt bloß ins Haus und tun ausarbeiten.
Tun ausarbeiten.
Okay, so that was almost over. So die moven dann ins Haus und tun ausarbeiten, which I don't know what he means by that. They work out, like maybe they work outside or something, like they commute somewhere, they work outside of that place. I'm not sure what that last part was about, but what I also noticed with several of these speakers, and what he just did, is die tun dann ausarbeiten, the sentence structure with tun, which again, kind of like with the totmachen earlier, sounds a little bit like a child is speaking. Sentence structures with tun do exist in German, but not in like official standard German. It's more like something that happens in dialects, or it's something that's kind of considered like, yeah, just bad German skills. Kids do it a lot because you basically avoid conjugating the actual word you're using. What's interesting is that obviously in English, you have sentence structures with to do as a normal part of the language. Whether that's a statement sentence, as in, I do really like these tomatoes. I don't know where that just came from. Maybe I'm hungry. Or a question. Do you like these tomatoes? It's super interesting that they all kind of do that. So really they have more in common than I thought a little bit. Like they do pronounce things similarly, and they all have this kind of Northern German sounding accent a little bit with their soft endings, and they all pronounce the umlauts the same way, and they all kind of do the thing with the to do. Let's see what else I got. Okay, I have one more video. There really wasn't as much as for Pennsylvania Dutch. There were a few other videos that were more educational that I actually already watched because it just provided some information about Texas German. The professor was in it giving interviews. But the last one that I found where it's just someone speaking it for a longer period of time is another video from Wikitangs called Evelyn Speaking Texas German. So let's hear it, Evelyn.
Ich heiße Evelyn Ruby Grona Leinheimer.
Okay, she's saying her name.
Ich war hier in Friedrichsburg geboren.
There's another one. You just hear the Texan right then and there. Just hearing the again, like the first one.
Bro, this is doing my head in.
I know,
because I'm like, okay, she's from Texas, but that's not English.
Right.
It's the weirdest feeling. It's like hearing her voice, like Texan, got it. Language, no idea. What?
Something's not lining up here.
Like if I ever got knocked out and she was the one that was talking to me, I'd be like, I guess I'm fucked. Like something's going on. I don't know what's happening. You know, that would be a trip and a half.
You can't take us anywhere.
No.
Also from
Während
Fredericksburg.
der Zweiten Weltkrieg. Mein Vater war in der Krieg in New Guinea und die Philippines.
Okay, so her dad was
war
in
da,
New Guinea and the Philippines for the war.
Die Zeit ich geboren war. So habe
That's the
ich
time when
ihn
she was
nicht
born.
gekannt, bis ich 16 Monate alt war. Ich bin in...
Again, she said gekent, just like the other woman from earlier. They used the same past form again. I mean, I don't know if like maybe that's her sister, because she talked about having a sister, but so that would make sense then that they speak alike. But you know, there's some consistency there.
Bin in die Schule hier in Friedrichsburg gegangen. Nach die Hochschule or High School bin ich nach College oder eine höhere Schule gegangen in North Texas.
Höhere Schule instead of college, like Hochschule. So that's actually funny. The other woman from earlier did that too. She said Hochschule for high school because that's the direct translation. But actually nowadays, Hochschule in modern German is actually used for a university or an equivalent for that. Like we also have like Fachhochschule, things like that. But it's not, it comes after what we would consider high school. So that's interesting that she like translates that with that. And then instead of university though, she said höhere Schule, or she said höhere Schule because of the umlaut. Basically she said high school and then higher school to like differentiate the two.
Die Universität of North Texas. Da habe ich gelernt, so dass ich eine Schullehrerin sein konnte.
Okay, she became a teacher.
Dichter nach Hause in Austin und habe Schule da für 8 Jahre gehalten.
She said Austin instead of Austin. That's super cool. I did not even think that they would pronounce those city names the German way.
Und dann ist mein Mann und unsere 2 Kinder wieder nach Friedrichsburg gekommen in 1977. Ich habe auch hier Schule gehalten und jetzt bin ich hier bei dem Pioneer Museum. Ich bin ein Archivist. Ich arbeite mit den alten Büchern und Bildern und
alte Bücher.
Alles, was die
she works with old books. She's part of that museum, Pioneer Museum. Works as an archivist. Archivist?
Meine
Archivistin? Archivmitarbeiterin?
My ancestors, in other words, kamen von Deutschland in 1846.
Okay, so her ancestors came from Germany in 1846.
Texan.
She's the 5th or 6th generation of Texan.
Alle Deutsch. Ich spreche Deutsch und Englisch beide.
She speaks both German and English.
Ich habe einen Bruder und eine Schwester.
She has a brother and a sister.
Beide wohnen auch hier in Friedrichsburg.
They both also live in Fredericksburg.
Meine Kinder tun nicht hier in Friedrichsburg wohnen.
Her children do not.
Sind nach
And again, she said, meine Kinder tun nicht hier wohnen. So the same thing with tun again.
Meine Schwester hat 3 Kinder und die wohnen alle hier in Friedrichsburg.
Okay, I think she's her sister. Because she just said her sister had 3 children, or has 3 children, and the other woman we listened to earlier has 3 children, and also she said she has a sister, and they both work at the same museum, and I'm pretty sure they're siblings.
Way to go. Way to use that Bruce Wayne logic. Love that.
Nice. Just
that you lie to me. They are sisters. They are related. Damn it.
Yes. I mean, I'd have to go back and like just see.
Is that the same chair?
Is that the same chair?
Yes.
I think it is the same chair.
My God.
They're sisters, and they even look similar.
Yeah.
I think that tracks.
Yep.
Inception.
It is. Yeah. Let me put my tinfoil hat on. All right.
Beide von sie können etwas von es verstehen, aber sie können es nicht mit einem anderen sprechen.
Okay, the kids can understand some of it, of the German, but they can't speak it.
Deswegen der Krieg ist, warum manche von den jüngeren Leuten heute nicht mehr Deutsch sprechen können.
The war is why a lot of younger people can't speak German anymore.
Or sprechen können, dann tun wir das nicht mehr zu ihnen lernen.
The parents decided that if they aren't allowed to speak it in school anymore, then we're not going to teach them anymore.
Sprechen, wenn sie das nicht dürfen.
Why should they learn it if they're not allowed to speak it?
Bei den Zweiten Weltkriegen haben die meisten von den Leuten hier alle Englisch und Deutsch gesprochen.
And by the time of World War II, most people here spoke German and English.
Warum, wenn meine Großmutter in Englisch sprechen darf, dass alles immer in rückwärts rauskommt. Aber das ist wegen des the order of the words when you translate from English to German. Sie hat immer alles rückwärts gesagt, habe ich gedacht. Aber das war...
Okay, so she just said that it always sounded like her grandma said everything backwards, but it was because of the order of the words. When you translate from English to German, she said as a child she like thought she was saying the words backwards in the wrong order, but it was just because she translated
Aber das war...
Isn't that kind of the same with like Spanish to English? Because I feel like, you know, every like job that I've had where I've had, you know, Spanish speakers that, you know, either they're like first generation, like they would say English phrases like kind of in reverse.
Well, yeah, because they translate Spanish directly. Like car red, you know, even though we would say red car.
Yeah.
That's normal, but they would translate it as car red. I mean, granted, not that specific.
Right, right.
Just saying, that's how it works. Because listen, I do the same thing when I'm talking Spanish, right? Like sometimes I'll put the Spanish all backwards because I want to say it like I want to speak Spanish in English, and that's not how it works.
Right.
It sounds weird. You know what I mean? So I have to remind myself that shit gets kind of flipped.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So that's what made me think of it when she said like, you know, German being in reverse.
That's interesting. I mean, I feel that for sure. I get that because you're translating and you want to directly translate what you say, but it just comes out different. It just comes out weird. It's like not how normal people would speak.
Right, like you trying to say cheese dip, you say dip cheese.
Yeah,
something
dip
like
cheese.
That. Yeah. You want some dip cheese?
Like, no.
Deswegen. Mein Ehemann ist in eine Country Schule gegangen und
her husband went to like a country school.
Nicht Deutsch during recess sprechen.
And they weren't allowed to speak German during recess, Pause.
Die Gründe gegangen, sodass sie Deutsch miteinander sprechen konnten, wann sie Football und Baseball gespielt haben.
Okay, so she said that they would then like go somewhere else. I didn't quite understand where she said they would go, so that they could speak German with each other while playing baseball and football.
Meine Kinder wünschen jetzt, sie könnten Deutsch sprechen, aber
my kids wish that they could speak German now,
sie gelernt, weil
but we didn't teach them.
Warum sollten wir, wenn sie das nicht ernst so? Es war nicht viel Hilfe für sie, wenn sie weiter fortgegangen.
But why would we have taught them? It wouldn't have helped them. Unless if they had gone to Germany.
Nach Deutschland gegangen.
Okay, she's been to Germany twice.
War in Berlin und dann Hannover, Heidelberg und Bingen am Rhein. Bingen am Rhein ist, wo mein Ehemann und seine Familie herkamen. Ich habe noch nicht jetzt irgendeine von meiner Familie gefunden in Deutschland.
She hasn't found any of her ancestors in Germany yet.
War es ein Rheinfluss-Cruise. Und wir waren in Koblenz, da sind welche von meiner Familie hergekommen.
Okay, the second time she went to Koblenz, which is where some of her family were from. She also said that the first time they went to Berlin and Heidelberg and a few other places. I already forgot what she said, but I think it's pretty much over.
Danke. Bitte.
Bitte. Again, the soft D, that just sounds very North German to my ears. And also I noticed that she also said erste, I think, like das erste Mal or something like that she said, where that sounds like Swabian, or not quite sure in which other dialects they say that as well, where they make the S to a sh sound, erste. So yeah, that was super interesting, honestly. I wish that there were a few more videos out there. I'm sure there are if you like dig a little bit deeper. I could kind of listen to this all day long because it's also very interesting what these people have to say. And again, I understood this much better than I did Pennsylvania Dutch, but I think that's really because the Texas Germans didn't just come from one specific dialect region, because for Pennsylvania Dutch it was mainly from like the Pfalz area with influences from Switzerland also, which are both dialects that I'm not not super familiar with personally. Plus, they came to the US about 200 years earlier, the Pennsylvania Dutch did, which makes a huge difference in how the language was spoken at the time and also how it's mixed since then. So to me, Texas German sounded much more like a German immigrated to the US as a child and then forgot some of their German and mixed it with English words and pronunciation a little bit. But in addition to that, they of course have their own words that they've established in their own language. And some of those words I actually wanted to share with you, but they didn't really come up in the video clips I watched. So I'm just going to share them with you now, because there's a few words that Texas Germans have basically made up because they didn't have any German word for that when they first encountered that. So then they made up a German word for it, but it's different from what we use in standard German in Germany. So that sounded a little bit more confusing than it actually is. For example, when they first immigrated to the US, they had never seen a skunk before. So when they first came across a skunk, they called it a Stinkkatz or Stinkkatze, which translates to stink cat. In standard German and European German, we call it a stink animal, a Stinktier. So that's just something that they kind of came up with separately from us Europeans.
I think that tracks. That tracks.
Like, yeah. What is it? That's a fucking stink cat, bro. Like, facts. I'm not going to argue. Whatever you think it is. In whatever language, it's a stink cat. Love that, dude.
Stink cat. That sounds like a jazz band from a like University of Texas Austin of these days. No, like Stink Cat playing Stink Cat.
That's great. I love that. It's so observational. It's like, yeah, that's a stink cat. I'm not fighting you.
I'm gonna use that from now on. Yeah. If a skunk ever does come around these parts, which I Lord, I hope not.
Stink cat. 100%.
You see that stink cat over there? You better have some tomato juice ready if you mess with that thing.
Oh God. Okay.
A similar one is the word for airplane, which obviously didn't really exist when they first left Germany, and then they called airplanes airships, so Luftschiff in German. But in standard German, it's called Flugzeug, so like flying stuff, or here it's translated with flight tool. And a Luftschiff is actually the same as airship in English, so it's a Zeppelin, it's the big things, it's not a plane. So yeah, overall, as I kept repeating throughout the video, they do sound very much German to me, with just like a few little pronunciation differences and sentence structure differences. They could also just be regional dialect differences from within Germany though, so like it doesn't even sound super foreign to me. And as I said, I think it's super impressive that they were able to maintain the language like that, like over generations and generations, and that even nowadays there are people who speak the language like that, even though, as I said earlier, kind of since World War II, it hasn't really been around that much anymore. So, you know, they didn't have a lot of people to practice and speak it with. So that's just very impressive. And also shout out to the team at the University of Texas for preserving it as much as they can before it's probably gonna disappear, which is really sad. Now, of course, I want to know from you guys, how much did you understand? Let me know in the comments below. And also, what other language or dialect do you want me to react to next? I know that many people have suggested Yiddish in the comments before, so is that something that I should do? Let me know about
Yiddish.
All right, so apparently there's a video here of it, so if y'all want us to check that out, please let us know.
Yeah, for sure.
But
this interesting, man.
Yeah, this was sometimes a bit of a mind boggle of hearing the Texas accent and certain English words incorporated into their German was just mind-boggling.
You know, granted, I don't know any German at all, but it's interesting to hear like the history behind the language and how the language got to be where it is. You know?
Yeah.
It's very unique, very, very Texan.
Right.
And it's pretty cool to have that. It's pretty cool to have that within our borders over here.
Oh, 100%. And the fact that it will probably die out around 2040 is quite sad. And what stood out to me was also kind of all who were speaking it, like the attitude towards not teaching their children how to speak it. And like, I feel like from what we've learned about Germany and the German people is that they're very matter-of-fact people. They're very you know, emotion doesn't play into decisions as much as, you know, logic and things like that. So the fact that like they weren't, or if they were sad about it, they didn't really didn't express it, of how the German language of Texas would probably die out soon, and that's something that's just
it's like
mind boggle.
It's not part of school. Why are we wasting time teaching it? Onward and outward. That's one less step.
And then that's German efficiency right there. It's just
one less step.
Just matter of fact. This is just how it is. That's the reality. Let's move on.
Yeah, I mean, and if you think about it, it probably would have evolved even more had it been passed on to the younger generations.
Right. Just like the Pennsylvania Dutch. Like it's passed on for like, was it 400 years? Something like that?
Yeah. Or 200 or no, or whatever Feli said. But it's like the German that they were speaking like referred to that time when it was before the war. That's where that stayed. It didn't evolve at all. It just got stuck back there. Didn't have a chance to be updated.
And evolve. It just kind of might really die out really soon, which
I
is
feel
sad.
like it would have been more Americanized than the Pennsylvania Dutch, just because of surroundings. Because you know that's not like a religious sect. They're just the Germans in Texas. That's it.
Religion didn't have as much to do with it.
No. So they're exposed to a lot more Americanisms than, let's say, the Pennsylvania Dutch that are in that thing. So in that bubble. So it would have been very interesting to see what it would have become, because I bet there would have been a lot more change.
Oh, 100%.
A lot more change.
Yeah.
But Stink Cat for the win. 100%.
Yeah, Stink Cat.
Stink Cat.
That's one of the things I'm gonna take from that as well, is Stink Cat.
Because I've heard Pole Cat before, but never Stink Cat.
Pole Cat?
Yeah. There's the two lines on the back. Looks like
Pole Cat. Yeah.
But yeah, that's right up there with Trash Panda and Cobra Chicken. That's right up there. And what is it? Prison Pony for Zebra.
I forgot about those, man.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Anyway, y'all let us know more of Feli's videos to check out. Like if y'all wanted to check out the Yiddish one, please let us know that. And like I said earlier, if you are a German that has immigrated from Germany to Texas, like as of recent time, anytime after the war, I'd love to hear your story on that. If you still speak German, if you've taught your potential children that, and it'd be interesting to see.
Or if you are, let's say a second generation from, like, let's say your parents are German, you're here, and you know German, how many Americanisms do you find you're putting into German?
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Both would be really great to know. So thanks in advance for those comments, and just thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. Y'all are awesome for that. If you like it, subscribe, watch another video. Thanks, channel members, for your support. And what now, Dan?
Unplug and do something legendary, guys.
And watch out for stink cats.
Yeah. 100%.
We'll see y'all in the next
later, guys.